Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Chit Chat with Brandon Utley and Laura Greeno. Nice to see you. Thank you for everyone who has participated and commented and watching, even the ones who don't comment. You guys tell me sometimes on the outside. So I appreciate it. Love to have you here and love all your questions and comments and input. Very smart. Very good. So today, we're talking about everyone hates marketing. How do you market when everyone hates marketing? And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. You and I both hate it. You know you do. If you do it, there's parts of it you love. But and you might appreciate like really amazing marketing, but you still hate it. You hate it because we are on our phones all the time, right? We live on our phones. We used to just see marketing on the TV, or we had more control, right? We saw it on the TV, we opened a magazine, we had to see it, we saw it in the newspaper, but we had control over it. Right now, we just use our phones, we're online, we use the computer all day, so it's in our face all the time. And it's not just consumers, right? Every other department hates marketing. Sales hates marketing. Product development hates marketing. Sometimes technology really hates marketing. But that's it. So everybody hates it. And what can we do to change things? Or what can we do to market how do we market in this situation where everybody hates it? I know Brandon had a bunch of ideas about like why and what and all that. So I'll let you start it off.
Thanks, Laura. Well, I think there are a lot of reasons why you mentioned that people hate marketing, including marketers, because many times we are actually consumers. So it's one thing when we're marketing for ourselves, our businesses, or our clients, we feel like it's a noble cause and we're helping them advance their sales and sell more products and services, and hopefully doing it in an ethical manner, et cetera. And it's funny how it seems fine when you're doing it, but when people are doing it to you, oftentimes, like you said, it feels like crap. You're interrupting me. You're invading my privacy.
I can't click out of this.
You're wasting my time, et cetera. So as consumers, we have all been victims of like bad marketing, right? Junk mail, spam, you name it, like poor targeting, relentless people, won't take you off the list, put you on the list without your permission, all the above, right? So for when you put yourself in the consumer mode mindset, which you need to do as a marketer, be aware of those things, right? Don't like Google used to say, don't be evil, right? For whatever, but like, don't be the a-hole. don't be that person, right? Like, be respectful of people, do the opt-in marketing the right way, etc. Right? Like, I know somebody who bought this massive email list, right? Like hundreds of thousands of names. And she splits it up in batches of like hundreds or thousands and bombs these out all the time. And I'm like, first of all, that's totally uncool, right? Those people didn't give you permission. Secondly, you could get in a hell of a lot of trouble for that. That's actually against the law in the United States and probably a lot of other countries. You can't do that, right? So you're taking a chance. And her defense is, but I blast, first of all, it was cheap and I blast these out. And I do get, a tiny percentage of people that take me up on my offer. So I feel like it's worth the trade-off. I'm like, but you're not building goodwill.
What's the industry?
She sells a sort of product, if you will, and it's a small business. It's a very, to a specific type of niche market. But I keep telling her, stop doing that and go after those people in that industry. Use things like Facebook ads or Instagram ads to target them, properly, and then get them to come look at your offer and opt into it, et cetera. So that's like one of the first things. Another thing, Laura, though, is, a lot of companies, when they start out, they just think we've made the best thing ever. It's like the best product or the best service. We don't need to market. Like, it's the classic, build it and they will come. total fantasy, right? And a lot of companies have fallen into that trap over the years, thinking, whether you're just starting out or you've been doing it forever. What, this is so funny. I was helping my dad clean out one of his closets the other day, and I found one of my original mobile phones, this Motorola. Wow. And I'm like, wow, Motorola back in the day was like probably number one in mobile phone sales, right? They were awesome products, really cool, still looks neat, form factor like years later. But it's like, where's Motorola now? They're not, they're gone, right? They had to retreat back to the cave and continue making like walkie-talkies for radio, whatever, right? Which is where they started. But I'm sure at one point they were like, we're the best and the baddest of the bunch. Like, we don't need to worry. Like, we got this thing covered. We will be so cool, so good in the cell phone market forever. And they're not, right? You cannot have that kind of hubris or, overconfidence or whatever. And I always think about the biggest companies. Like, whenever I drive down the highway and I see a billboard for McDonald's, I'm like, McDonald's sells billions of cheeseburgers every second, right? Like, technically speaking, they probably don't need to market, but they know they do because they have to remain top of mind, right? When somebody's getting hungry, they have 100 choices, endless choices, really. Where am I going to eat next? And, if they see something and it goes, oh yeah, I could make it to McDonald's in like 5 minutes. It's quick. It's cheap. I can kind of know what I'm getting. Why not? Right. It may not be the healthiest choice or whatever, but you know what I mean? It's like,
they have to hit them when they're young. They have to. They know it. And they have to.
That's right. But that's a whole other conversation, obviously. But, even as long as they've been around, and just name the company, Ford Motor Company, whoever, right? Like, the biggest, best companies know it's not an option. They have to do it, and it's relentless. That's probably another reason why people hate it, even marketers, because it's like, you can't stop doing it, because the second you stop, somebody's filling the void. They're filling the time. They're in front of the consumer and you're not, et cetera. Right. But, another reason, Laura, I think people hate marketing is many people just don't understand it. They think it's just this, esoteric science or art or some combination thereof, and they just don't take the time to understand it. But really, marketing, you can think about it from a lot of different ways. When let's say you want to get married, you're going to be marketing yourself. You're not probably, right? Like, you want to put on your best impression when you go out. You probably won't dress like a slob and speak poorly or do things that make you look awful, right? Like, it's a competition. It's a competition. So you're marketing yourself, right? It's like, it's no different from a product or service. You're competing again with mind share and with consumer preferences and all these things going on in split seconds for people to say, I'm going to decide between this one, that one, or the other one. And once they decide on one direction, generally they stick with that for a while, right? It depends on the category, of course, but you have to make those impressions. So it's a science for sure. And there is definitely a lot of art to it. Any comments about that part of, why people hate it? Because they just think it's something they don't understand.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about two areas that you mentioned. One is that science piece, right? That science versus art piece. And the other one that you mentioned, oh shoot, I'll remember it in a second. But let's talk about that science art piece. So I think, and this came from a friend of mine, a really smart branding guy, Michael Christner, who I appreciate. But I asked him recently, he knows one of my newer clients, how do you think I can best support, because they've worked together. And I love what he said, that please stay on top of the science of marketing, because so let's just take product development, sales, any consumer. Really, there's this mindset that they think anyone can do marketing. It's not just an art, right? It's not just a science. And no, everyone cannot do marketing, but they think there's no value in it. And I think that's been a problem, right? So we're no longer, it's no longer Mad Men and Don Draper, right? There's this super talented person who's going to be right 80%, 90% of the time. They're going to be right based on gut feelings. That's awesome. We still have those people who are going to be right based on gut feelings because it's just inside of them as a marketer, right? But what we have to do in order to make sure that product development, sales, CEO, whomever else in the company, and any other consumer understands the science piece of it behind marketing, right? Now we have data. Now we have this. There is a process. There are systems. I can show you how these things work. And that helps us get to the quantifiable piece, right? That's been missing this whole time. And that's why people think anyone can do it. Or, why it's not respected, right? Because they haven't been able to say, well, this is the return on investment that you've got on this branding piece that we did. This is but now we can. So I do think it's super critical and part of like our responsibility to help others understand, yes, there is a science. Yes, there is a process. Yes, there are systems and there's technology. All of these things are now in marketing. It is not your, your person who draws or that's how marketing used to be, right? Used to have a little bit of just this person can write, this person can draw, but they didn't have the strategic piece behind it. So I think that part is really important. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there is this sort of overarching theory that you're either the Don Draper type, super creative, and you can just come up with these ideas out of nowhere and everybody goes, wow, that's genius. And again, that still happens. There are a lot of those people out there, and they're very necessary because a lot of time it's not like a formula where you can just say, if do this, this, and this, and it'll be successful. Sometimes you got to throw in those wild cards. You've got to look for those unique angles and messaging, et cetera. Right. But then there's a whole
exploration, right? You got to explore.
Yeah. But then there's then the other end of that, I sort of think of like Dr. Spock from Star Trek, right? The very clinical, numbers driven analytics, like no empathy type of person. And they kind of look at it from that perspective of, like I said before, we have the best product. Like, what's the problem here? Like, because we think we have the best product or service in this category or whatever, and the price is right, then surely enough people will find it and will kill it, right? That's not true. So there has to be a balance between the two. You can't just go off and be super creative and crazy because people might think, I don't really understand you, or you're too wacky or whatever for me. At the same time, ultimately, they got to make a decision. Let me just give you a quick story, and I know we got to wrap up. I think a lot of people think marketing is a big waste of time and money, and it certainly feels that way, especially in the longer sales cycles. But for example, one of my clients that I'm working with just went through a very long, months-long process of trying to, pick a vendor for a particular software as a service type of product. They ended up going with the company that was much higher in price, with a more complicated pricing structure, and just et cetera, right? And it was like nip and tuck, back and forth up until the bitter end. Unfortunately, the other company likely had better technology, in my opinion, but they just didn't market and sell themselves well. So in this particular instance, that one company that had a much higher price, they won over this customer over time, because I think they gave them more information and kind of made them feel like, hey, we're a better match for you. We've been around longer than the other company. We speak your corporate language. So we're going to send you 50 documents versus their 5. We're going to give you all kinds of Excel spreadsheets and models to look at and data that we've done with other customers, bombarding them with like, you can't go wrong making this decision because we got your back here kind of thing. So it was fascinating to me to see that happening in real time from a marketing and sales perspective. So I guarantee they were like, all of these vendors were probably thinking, what a waste of time and money. It's taken months. Why aren't they making a decision? but the other ones didn't check those boxes the same way. So, all goes to show you can sell something at a higher price that may not be the absolute best product. But if that, it goes back to that science, like you got to figure out what that customer is really buying. It's not necessarily the software itself. It's like everything else around it.
Your attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Attention.
So I think we're about out of time. We've got to tee it up for next week and talk about where we're.
Well, I just want to mention one other piece of the pie, which is what if, right? We took a completely different, I think one of the problems is that we do present everything like this is the best possible result. And instead, what if we just say, this is who we are not. This is what we do not do. This is what, this best result happens for 50% of the people. And if they have this, and this going on, these are the variables that made that perfect result happen. 25% of the time, this happens. And then 25% of the time, not good things happen. I think it's like that perfect, it's like the Verizon red coverage map. Mm-hmm. It just says, we're here, we're not here. I think that's much more like realistic in today's world. I think saying what you are not and setting expectations properly ahead of time and quantifying them as best as you possibly can with real numbers helps people see that you are real, that you're not faking them out, and that their expectations aren't set improperly so that they're surprised when things don't go well. I think that's what marketing's problem has been in the past, is just making everything hunky-dory roses when there are elements and variables that lead to the success. And I think the better that companies can kind of say those out loud, like think about the terrible drug commercials we hear. Oh, but here are all the side effects. Boom, 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 boom. You're like, yuck. But you're not going to be surprised when it happens.
Yes. Yeah. For most people, they're not going to, because they don't have those regulations. It's like McDonald's is not going to say, enjoy our new cheeseburger, may cause diarrhea and, whatever. Yeah. It's like, they're not going to do that because they don't have to. Right. But to your point, it's like, I
think that is the direction marketing should go.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that means a lot of companies that are marketing and trying to sell their products have to cut their losses earlier, and I'm thinking again of this particular client situation. There was one vendor that just got knocked out because there was just a major hole they had, and they just didn't really acknowledge that. And if they had and said, look, if this is one of your major expectations, clearly we're not going to be able to meet that. Sorry, we're going to just have to bow out. Yeah. They kept trying to hang in there.
Don't waste your own time.
No.
Get to the no as fast as possible, because when you're done with that no, that means you get to move on to the yes.
Right.
That's sales, that's sales 101.
Yeah. And then right. And if you figure out like, gee, these people and those people they're all telling us the same thing, like we've got a major gap in our service or coverage or whatever, then we probably need to address that. Right.
Right.
But yeah, they're going to learn that after the fact, because they were like, we can't believe we lost, but we'd love to find out why. And so we'll have that conversation with them and say, you guys blew it. I mean, based on what you offer, it may be awesome for other people, but it's not going to work for us. And you should have known that. And we're done.
Good story.
Like, Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon. That was a really good story. Next week on Marketing Chit Chat with Brandon and Laura, we'll talk about the audiences that are on the different social platforms. So kind of like the demographics, who's on what social platform and how can you find them and what do they want to hear when they're on there? Best way to market to them. All right. Talk to you next week.
Thanks.